most fathers who are reactive, right? The ones that yell at everything right away. As soon as a small thing happens, big explosion. We've all been there. I think we feel like the problem is we're not patient. You may think you have an anger problem. And I'll beg to differ. I don't think either of those are the real problem. I think the core problem is we have what's called an unhealed childhood wound problem. If we are not able to get to the bottom of what is exactly causing us to be triggered when our kids push our buttons, we're kind of just going to white knuckle through parenting. Like, all right, well, we'll try again tomorrow. Right? And then we realize that it just keeps happening and happening. And so getting to that understanding of why exactly is just triggering me can help us monumentally as we go on through this dad journey. And so today's talk, I'll talk about that, what's actually happening in the moment, and then how to take a step back to see, well, what in my childhood back in the day when I was growing up, what is resurfacing right now and is just being a reflection through my child, which is forcing me to react. And so we'll look at that, things we can put in place to kind of address that. And so we're better in the future. And so if you're new to my channel, my podcast, my YouTube channel, my name is Odini McBean. I'm a mindful fatherhood coach. And I essentially show dads how to show up more present, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually and mentally, how to build deeper bonds with their children, and also just how to show up better for themselves in general, and how to parent with an understanding of being okay, being vulnerable, and tapping in more into your emotional side of parenting as dads, right? And so to go back to the topic of this talk, let's break down the actual moment first, right? And so what is the moment? The moment is something small happening, and we will react a huge reaction. So something small happens, your kid pushes your button, you start yelling, they are sad, maybe they're crying, who knows? And then you start to feel really bad on the inside. You start to feel really guilty. You tell yourself, oh my gosh, like, why did I do this? And I thought I would be better than this. I know better than this. And you start to shame yourself. And when you shame yourself, what typically happens is it doesn't help at all. Like shaming yourself actually makes the behavior more repeatable, if that makes any sense, right? But that's what actually happens when you shame yourself. You're parenting unconsciously, right? You don't know where to find the answers to why you're reacting this way. And so because you don't know where to look, you can shame yourself all you want. You can feel bad all you want, but you're going to just continue and continue to display the same behavior because you don't even know the root of it. It's unconscious. And so that's what I kind of want to talk about in this section of the video is like what's actually happening. And, your reaction is not about your kid, right? Your reaction is about your feelings and how does this make you feel? And there's something that's bothering you, and this is how you're choosing to express yourself. Reminds me of there is a Buddhist term called samskaras. And samskaras are essentially like deep wounds that are just woven into you and based off of past experiences. And these deep wounds that are woven into you based off of your past experiences actually create automatic responses to what's happening in real life in real time. And so it's like when you start the car and you got the car on auto drive or something, right? Like it's just happening. And so in the moment, you're not even thinking about, this is happening because of experiences I've had growing up. That's not what you're thinking about, but this is what samskaras are. And so later on, we'll talk about how to do the work to uncover that, right? And so these samskaras are just something happened in your childhood. The wound will forever be there. And whenever anything comes up that reminds you of that, you just automatically react the way you react. 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a reactive way. You're not really being mindful about it. You're just expressing yourself. You're jumping out the window, so to say. And so that's a samskara. And, recently, this wasn't that recent, but a few months ago, I was in Barnes and Noble with my son, and I'm telling him to pick a book, and he picks a book that I don't think he should be reading, right? It was like he's in the 8th grade, and I think this was like a lower level book, and I'm like, nah, get something else. And so I then decide that these are the books that I'm going to get him that are age appropriate. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, I don't know why you wasting your money. Like, I'm not about to read these books. I don't know why. And I immediately go to town, right? I start yelling and I'm like, well, what you mean? And we kind of get into this back and forth. And, cooler heads prevailed. He apologized. I apologized. And when I look back in that moment, I had to realize never once was I in a library with my father. Never once was I in a library with my mom actually just jokingly said this the other day to me. She's like, do you remember when we used to take you to the library and just like dropped you off and just left? And she's like, who knows what you were doing in that library? And it's true. Like that my parents love me to death, but it's true. Like, this is the kind of angle they took. It's like, just drop them off, let them figure it out. We'll come back later. I would have loved to be in the library with my parents, looking at books together and doing the whole thing. And so when I'm doing this for my son, knowing that I never had this experience, in the moment he says something that makes this experience I'm trying to cultivate for him negative, or I'm perceiving it as negative, boom, I snap. But that is truly happening because I'm mad that he's not appreciating something that I never got at his age. So you see how two things can be true here? One thing could be true is maybe he is being a little ungrateful in his moment, and he addressed that, he apologized. So that could be true. But the other thing that is true here that we typically tend to just overlook, right? Because it's hard to look internally, especially in real time. The other thing that could be true is it could be very true that I'm mad because I never got this opportunity and he's squandering it. But that's more about me, right? That's more about, oh, when I was his age, I wanted that. I really wanted to have this experience with my dad, but I never got it. And so now I'm mad when he reacts this way. And so that's what you would call like an inner child wound. And that's how an inner child wound an unhealed inner child wound can show up so simple without you even realizing it in parenting. And so your nervous system is, I would say, it's like it learns from the past. You know what I mean? It kind of like, this is what makes me feel safe. This is what makes me react this way. And it just learns from that. And so we have to find ways to let our nervous system know, no, it's fine. Like, we're safe in this environment, right? Like, this seems like far out things to think about, but imagine if you just took 5, 10, 15 minutes a day and really look deep and really contemplate these things. So imagine how many micro moments of parenting will go completely different. That's why I like to think about it as, like, I do this inner work as a dad, and no one would ever think that dads would be doing this type of stuff. I want to like take the lead on that. I want to take the charge on helping us with this. And I spend 5, 10, 15 minutes a day looking internally at this stuff. I'm basically trading that in for thousands and thousands of micro moments with my children that I'm not yelling, that I'm not reactive, that they're not mad at me because I hurt their feelings. And this whole time, majority of the reason why that was happening had nothing to do with them. And so something that you got to think of is willpower is just, well, you hear this all the time in self-help talk. Willpower is fleeting, and this is real. Think about how many times you told yourself, I want to be a more patient dad. I just have to be more patient. And then think about how many times have you actually been that way, right? You can't willpower yourself to patience. It works until it doesn't, right? And so that's why you have to kind of be a lot more introspective about this. I wrote this down. There's like a very good saying. Oh, yeah. So I practice a lot of Zen Buddhism, and in Zen, a lot of times they'll say, listen, there is a moment where freedom lives. And what they'll say is there's a moment in between stimuli and your reaction. So, stimuli, think of that as just what it is, the moment, whatever the thing that's happening. So, there's always a small moment in between that and our reaction. And in that small moment, they say is where freedom lives. And that's amazing. Because if you think about it, right? Like anytime anything pisses us off, whether it be children, relationships, friends, work, you realize there's always a moment where you actually get to choose how you respond, right? It's like it's so tiny of a moment, but your awareness is aware of it, right? And that's where the freedom lives. And so if you're not doing the work of uncovering why you're being so reactive on certain things, that moment is just going to be like, zoop. It's not even going to be existent. But the more you do the work, the more you realize that moment is ever present. And so how we choose to show up in between the thing happening and us actually reacting is where freedom lives, right? And that's something that you should think about. And so the way to go about this is not just willpowering. I'm gonna be patient. I'm gonna be patient. Is to actually sit down for 5-10 minutes and do the work. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be every night, every morning, but spend some days 10 minutes a day and writing about this stuff. In my description, I have a completely free guide. It's an inner child and shadow work guide that I created for dads. And I have questions in there that you can respond to, right? You literally can download it and look at the questions, look at the prompts I've created. One of them says something like, man, what what did I need in this moment as a child? Right? If I'm reacting this way with my kid, what exactly did I need when I was a child in this very moment? And you respond to things like that and you realize like, dang, man, all I needed was my pops to want to be in Barnes and Nobles with me and in the library with me. That's all I really needed. And because I didn't get that, now I'm snapping at my kid. Right. And so I would urge you to download the free shadow work and inner child guide for dads that I have in my description and just take it day by day and let me know how that works out for you. I'll see y'all next week.